Welcome to the Retail Reality Show.
Welcome to another episode of the Retail Reality Show. I'm Nino Bergfeld, your co-host, and today it's a beautiful sunny day in Munich. We have a great lineup today. And before we deep dive into an amazing, interesting topic, I want to introduce my co-host today, Yael. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Nino, recovering from a flu. The sun is also out in Israel today, but it's quite windy and excited for our session today.
Yeah, so the flu also hit me. I think every 4 years, and this time it also hit me quite hard. I had to stay in bed for over a week, and so I feel with you. But you're looking great as always. So I don't know how you can be sick.
It's just a lot of pills. That's the secret.
Okay, but go back to bed after our recording, please.
That's the plan. We can also delete this part after, so that our listeners wouldn't know the operational issues.
It's also a live show, but fine. So we have an interesting guest today, Miguel Bagulho from Brightpixel, and that's a very interesting conversation we had in preparation, and also a very interesting topic. It's about investments. It's about investment into retail technology, because Brightpixel is part of a bigger retailer from Portugal, Sonae Group. But I don't disclose too much, and would thank Miguel for being our host today. And Miguel said it's his first podcast, so I'm sure you will do a great job, Miguel. But before we deep dive into the topic, I will give you the stage. You want to say a few words, what you do as an investment director at Brightpixel, and what Brightpixel in general maybe is doing?
Thank you for inviting me, and I'm very happy to be here. I would say, first of all, I'm quite jealous of you too, because not because of the flu, but I'm here in Portugal, which is a very sunny country. But today it's a very winter kind of day, so I'm a bit jealous of you guys.
What does winter mean? How many degrees? 20?
It's not that it's cold, but it's raining quite a lot,
Okay.
and windy as well. But normally we can complain. So I'm being a bit exaggerated. First of all, maybe a bit on myself. I came into venture and tech a bit by chance, and I've heard this story a few times before from other people, from other investors. I was doing M&A in more typical kind of sectors, in industrials, even retail, different areas, more traditional ones, and more traditional kind of PE deals. And that's where I joined Sonae, the mother company that you mentioned, at the holding level. And yes, then I was doing again mostly M&A, because I had been doing that for 10 years. And there was a corporate venturing initiative back then, still on paper, still on PowerPoint, and I kind of had the responsibility to take it to the ground. And that's where I kind of fell in love with both tech and venture, and Sonae, which is a sizable conglomerate, revenues of 10 million, market cap of 2 billion, different retail assets. Grocery is the major business, but it has other businesses in retail, like consumer electronics, shopping malls, fashion, parapharmacies. It's quite broad, and also a telco operator. So Sonae decided in 2015 to launch a more structured corporate venture initiative. At the time, it was called Sonae IM. It has in meantime been renamed to Brightpixel, I think 2 years ago, and essentially is an independent investment arm doing VC. Series A and Series B is our sweet spot. We normally lead rounds and play an active role. By independent, I mean that we operate as a fund. We are financially driven, but of course we bring the strategic knowledge of the industry of retail and the specialization in retail. We also do cybersecurity and infrastructure software. Those are the other two topics, but we are very laser focused on our investment themes. But then on the other hand, we are a very thesis-driven investor, so we go after the best, or what we feel are the best opportunities, companies, products, teams in the market, and we can invest anywhere in the globe, even though from Portugal.
I have a question to that. Is it always related to, let's say, where you see a gap in your own business? Yeah, you mentioned you have electronics companies. Yeah, you're basically an omni-channel retail. Is it grocery or electronics? It doesn't matter. It's omni-channel retail
and pets as well, right?
and pets. Yeah,
Pets
and
as well. Sure.
And pets.
Yeah.
So it's always a store. It's online. And are you going after your investments with a lens of, can we use that in our own IT stack finally, or is this agnostic and independent?
It's agnostic and independent. Of course, we leverage always on those links. Even before the investment, we make the connection to some of the businesses or the relevant business for that particular product. And that's also part of our assessment or DD work whenever we can make that happen. Sometimes after that, good things happen in the sense that these companies may gain a client, but we use it mostly as kind of our expert base from the retail side, which come in as users, people that know very well the pain. They will know other solutions that are available in the market. They will tell us how they are tackling the problem currently. So there's a lot of very valuable information for us as an investor, and even for the startups themselves, because they also get that kind of feedback at some point about the product or about other topics, mostly related with the product, of course, which is also valuable for them.
Mm-hmm. And when you look at, let's say, the multitude of opportunities you have, so in supply chain, you mentioned cybersecurity, retail store operations, e-commerce. I mean, there is a vast menu of opportunities. How do you invest? How do you decide where you invest? What is it, the business case? Is it the biggest need from the business, or how do you see that?
As I was saying before, we are a very thesis-driven investor. So we every day we of course talk about retail. We see our own portfolio. We go to the most relevant conferences in retail. So there's a lot of deal flow going on as well. When we started, of course, we set kind of the main pillars for investment at the time. And this was 2015. One topic that we had as a clear one was what we call then data analytics, and maybe now we would call it AI, but it's still kind of the same idea, which is we found that there still was a lot of empirical knowledge being applied to retail, and we felt bringing some more intelligence, efficiency made sense, and so we looked back then, and we're still looking now more AI driven, but we looked back then at companies that had a software with some sort of intelligence on top of it to manage the major activities in retail. We also had omnichannel as a clear topic, relevant topic for retailers, still is, and so solutions around omnichannel was another one of our pillars. And the last one, we call it e-commerce enablers, is still applies. But then, of course, annually we review not these pillars, because they continue, but kind of the sub-segments below those pillars, what are perhaps the most interesting areas. And this information can come from all of that I mentioned before, but also from the contacts that we have with our business side, with the retail side. So it's a combination of different data points. and of course our own deal flow. So we are very intentional in areas that we like and we go after them. But also, of course, and honestly, we react to deal flow that comes to us or we find somehow, and it sparks an idea, and then we go after that area of interest.
We have a category called Red Buzzer. So deal flow, you mentioned multiple times deal flow, Miguel. And I think our listeners are not experts in venture capital and investment. So maybe if you can just quickly explain what deal flow means, that would be great.
Deal flow is our bread and butter. So it means in our activity, we have to look at hundreds of companies, startups, to decide which ones we should try to invest. Most of the times, or a lot of the times, I would say it's us that have the decision and we decide not to go ahead. Others are the founders find other investors that feel are more fit to their needs. And sometimes the match happens, right? But it's 2-3 per year in case of retail tech. So, but we need to have this kind of volume of companies that we speak with to be able to, in the end, make these 2-3 investments.
It's like a marketing funnel. Like you fill in top of the funnel and then you convert, and in the end you close 2 to 3 times a year, right?
Absolutely. Even
Sure.
and volume counts, but of course quality is also very relevant.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, you have to have a lot of volume of companies you speak with, and then in the end you'll decide which ones you make your
Yeah,
bets.
I think there's a lot, in VCs, there's a lot of marketing, obviously, because you need to position your fund in a way that attracts the good startups and the good founders. And you need to get the word out there so that startups will reach out to you, because sometimes, the good companies are not always discoverable at events and stuff like that. But Miguel, we usually start with some ice-breaking questions. I feel like we already broke the ice here, but we still want to get your perspective on those issues. And you and I first met at Shop Talk in Vegas, I think, quite
Possibly,
a few years ago. And you also mentioned that you and your team are going a lot to industry events. What is your favorite from all the industry events?
I am gonna. Someone is gonna get mad if I select one. We like in the US we like NRF and Shop Talk. Those would be the most relevant ones and the ones that we never skip. We have some in Europe, like Retail Technology Show. Shop Talk is also doing their own event here in Europe for a few years. NRF will do their own in Paris this year as well. So we'll attend those for sure. And then there are other smaller ones that are organized by other VCs or other entities like yourself, Yael, which are also very interesting to us, relevant. Sometimes they are easier to network on those smaller, more intimate events. And we also do our own kind of roadshow. So we decide, let's go to Paris and speak with a few investors and startups. And so we organize these kind of 1 to 3 days trips. So it's a combination of all of this.
Of course, it's always a combination. And I think you also mentioned the magic word AI, which, we don't go through an episode without mentioning this word a few times. What is your favorite AI tool these days? Is it ChatGPT, DeepSeek?
I use more ChatGPT. That's the one that I'm using the most, yes.
And of course, you're investing in retail and you work for a retail group. So in terms of your personal preferences, where do you like shopping, in store or online?
It's also a mix, but for example, grocery, I do it online most of the time, at least the bulk of it. And then there's always something that is missing, and so for those I go to the offline, the brick and mortar. On the rest, for example, electronics, I like to go to the store at least to experience, and then maybe in the end I may purchase online. So I would say perhaps I'm a typical kind of shopper in that sense.
You do quick commerce for the stuff you forgot.
I do, yeah. We have some options there, and yes, we sometimes we use it, yeah. Very, but not. It's like once, twice, every 3 months, something like that.
Mm-hmm. So Miguel, getting a little bit lower in the funnel, so to say, coming back to the analogy, I think you just mentioned a few investment themes where you say, hey, those are the key themes. You mentioned analytics. But if you go maybe down to a more tangible level, can you give us your, let's say, big bullets? What's hot in retail tech at the moment? So also for our listeners who are mostly from retail business side, what should they look at? What can't they miss? Obviously, AI is a big buzzword. Cybersecurity is a big one. So maybe if you can give us some double click on that, that would be great. What are the investment themes, and also what are the hot technologies you can't miss? Not just today, but maybe also in the next 2 to 3 years. So give us your point of view.
Maybe it's worth also speaking a bit about my past experience, in the sense that there are always waves of things, topics that come, and with those we see startups coming. Some of them prevail and get funded and maybe get an exit, and everything goes perfectly. Others are a bit more temporary. So in the past, there has been a fury of returns companies, fitting, autonomous stores, Web3, headless. So there's always these topics. I think currently we see, of course, always topics like this. Theft prevention is clearly one topic that retailers are concerned with, and so there's a lot of technology around that. Sustainability as well, maybe more in Europe than in the US, also because of some regulation, but definitely a topic. Retail media, it has had different names before. I mean, it is not like it is a new theme, but I think perhaps recently retailers are coming again to try and leverage on retail media. So all these things continue to happen and will continue to happen. I think you touch AI. I think, and this is a belief that I have, I think we are still at the tip of the iceberg in terms of AI for retail. It's very early days. There are a few use cases, but not perhaps very transformational topics yet. But I think they will come, as in many industries. But I think retail is clearly one of them. And I'll go back to the initial kind of pillars that I mentioned, the data analytics, in the sense that retailers will always look for efficiency. And I think AI will bring that efficiency in the core activities retailers have. And so as these more related tools come to the market or are launched, I think AI will play a very relevant role in retail in the future.
And when we double click a little bit on those core activities, so I mean, so is it where's this with the best opportunity? Is it supply chain, store operations? Obviously, in omnichannel, you have a lot of field workers, frontline workers, e-commerce, customer service. So how do you see that?
If we look at currently, we see things like in search and discovery, recommendation for sure, customer support. You touched that. I mean, not only in retail, there's also in marketing automation. So several, and also what we experience, at least what we kind of know from speaking with people in the ecosystem. I think several retailers are keen on doing more kind of internal efficiency topics, and still are a bit not sure if scary is the word, but still cautious, concerned to use it or use it in ways that impact customers, right, directly. But I think that will go away at some point. Topics, I'm sure. Well, the core topics for retailers are always like inventory, pricing, store operations. So it will have to come to those at some point. As they appear, I think this will be where we'll see the real transformation when retailers start using in these kind of activities.
Miguel, I think as an investor, it's very easy to get excited about new technologies, like shiny, cool startups. But how are you guys seeing it in terms of the actual implementation of those technologies in the retail business? What are some of the challenges of, implementing a new technology in the retail business that has, different departments, silos, different politics, obviously, and interest and KPIs for different departments? How complicated it is to actually introduce a new technology in a retail business?
Yeah, it can be challenging, especially on enterprise. And when you talk about those departments, we are talking about larger retailers, and that is correct. I think things have improved, at least since I've started on this activity 10 years ago. But still, there is the syndrome of let's do it in-house. This was not invented here, right? I think that still exists. I think there's still that saying that is an old one, which is no one gets fired by hiring IBM, right? I think that those things still exist, but honestly, there's been quite an evolution in terms of how retailers see startups and innovation. Their interest also in this kind of new technologies. They're understanding that if they don't get ahead of the curve, uh, newcomers will come and will eat part of their cake, or if not all. So I think there's more awareness to this in generally in retail than we've seen perhaps a few years ago.
Mm. And that's interesting what you're saying. I mean, if I look at my, I'm working for a big tech company. If I look at my customers in the last couple of years, there has been a lot of build. I do it myself, like what you just said. Up until a point where maybe the economy got weaker, and then there were layoffs, especially in the tech world, and I see a little bit of a shift to buy. Are you saying that's also prevalent in your world? I mean, you had a different reason for it. You said we have to stay ahead of the curve. If you don't talk to startups and try to build everything on your own, you're too slow. But are you seeing that? Is this a general theme and trend in retail that companies buy more and not build anymore?
Or at least buy and build on top, right? There was a time perhaps they were doing all of it. But generally, yes, they perhaps do more buy and build, or simply buy in certain situations, understanding that, as you were saying, part of it is not the core, right? Developing technologies is not a retailer's core business. Of course, the underlying use cases will be in some of the cases, right? But from that perspective, I see more and more willingness from retailers to buy rather than build. Even in some cases, as in the past, there was also the fear of if I'm hiring this small startup in a core topic, and for some reason this startup does not get funded, I'm in trouble, right? The fear existed. I think they're still cautious around that, but I think also retailers perhaps understand a bit better that there's a lot of investors out there, and if the technology is good, for sure it will get funded and things will go well.
Yeah. Fired, because you just said fired. And you also mentioned frontline workers, inventory pricing, frontline workers, stores, as one of the key areas where AI will find its application. How do you see that? Because if you look at those areas, you can drive efficiencies, but is it more of I get rid of the employees because AI will accelerate everything and eradicate frontline workers, people who do pricing, or is this more a augmentation of those workers in those roles? How do you see that?
This is a personal opinion, but I see more the augmentation than the replacement. I mean, maybe I'm talking a bit from my own perspective. I
That's
still
fine.
like to speak with people, right? When I go to the store, of course, if I have a better service, the willingness to pay and to buy, and perhaps increase even my basket size will be higher if the service is good, right? If I get the good recommendations, or if the person on the other side is able to understand what things I'm in need of, right? So I think from that perspective, it's more about augmentation than replacement in a lot of situations, at least related with the store and the store experience.
To taking your example of electronics or pets, so rather giving someone an iPad, a frontline worker, and take away of the burden of, I don't know, doing store replenishment, and let them focus on the customer, give them an AI that gives them recommendations, how to upsell, cross-sell, and better serve the customer is more of the thing you see than eradicating this frontline worker and putting a screen in, and the possibility to talk to an AI. That's what you're saying, right?
Yeah, and I can give you an example from our portfolio. So there's a company called Fresh. They do fresh items replenishment. So they have an in-store tool for that. And because there's the waste in food is huge in retail, not only in retail, I mean in other areas. And so this tool, of course, gives recommendations on the replenishment, but still the work is done by the people at the store. And there are a part of say 20% of the whole stock of the fresh items that the machine understands that the person in the store is better suited to make that decision, and so there's no kind of recommendation there. So this to say that there are things that, and also an important aspect is what before took maybe 3 hours to do, now they do it in much less time, and they can focus on the 20% that perhaps make the difference in terms of their own decision, right? So it's things like that we really believe AI can come and augment efficiency and other areas in retail.
And you in this case, you even take the sustainability / ESG box. I mean, because I don't know, you can also say, hey, if this is getting close to the expiration date, I give it to a service. In Germany, we have Too Good To Go, for example, which is you can donate it to, or give it to the food bank or whatever. So I think it's also
Or you can sell it in a discount in the store to make sure that people are actually taking the food before it goes to waste. But
that's a great idea. I haven't seen those solutions. Yeah? So maybe automated marketing campaign. If you're getting close to the expiration date, automated marketing campaign is going out to your top customers or customers in a segment. That's a smart idea. Maybe we should create a startup around that, Miguel.
There are already people working on that. But Miguel, you shared an exciting example from your portfolio. Can you maybe share like one or two more examples of really, groundbreaking tech companies that are doing cool things in the retail space, or even companies that you've seen? I mean, you are obviously investing from a certain point, so maybe you've seen startups that are too early for you guys, but that look interesting and exciting. You don't have to share names, but just like generally
use cases that impressed you.
Exactly.
I think that would be interesting. Yeah?
So there's a very cool area currently that can have AI, but is not AI focused, which is the creators economy. So for many years, marketing activities were mostly on paid media. And then at some point, we saw the rise, especially after COVID, perhaps, of the influencers marketing, right? And so it became very relevant for these kind of let's say professionals to have tools to make their own creative content that then brands could use on their different platforms. One thing that we're also witnessing is that these kind of influencers is a pyramid. So you have these kind of more professional influencers, and then you have a layer of perhaps people that don't live out of this activity, but still like to promote or to share videos or other content using certain brands. And we see also brands looking into this as a very interesting channel, perhaps more efficient than more traditional ones, to actually bring more sales to their top line, right? And so we're seeing there's several companies have been getting funded recently in this kind of creator economy segment. And there's also this more approach to the micro and nano influencers, which we kind of see a great merit in. And so let's see what happens. I think this is one that will stick around for a while.
So basically, the bigger influencers you are saying is maybe they are on Instagram or TikTok and they have a huge followership, and
Absolutely.
one set of solutions is targeting them and how to leverage them better in enterprises. And the other one is micro and nano. So how do you see that? Is that the housewife around the corner who has 10 followers on Insta, or how? What's that?
So where is the limit between this and just user generated content?
It is related with that, but is more than that. So it's in most cases these are brand lovers of a certain brand. So we are talking about the customer base and the advocates of that of that brand, right? So it's a bit different than the influencers, which are they get paid, and so they promote a brand because, well, they get paid for it. They may like it, but I mean, it's a more of a commercial kind of transaction. In these more nano, the incentives come from things that may not be a commission, right? Maybe early access to certain product or other things that a brand lover would really like to have, right? And not so much the cash component of it. So it's a different kind of approach.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously have a little bit of experience working with creators and influencers, so I think it's a really exciting space and one that is likely not leveraged enough by some retailers. And today, it's even spreading towards. I mean, you mentioned earlier retail media, so it's even spreading towards those areas. So it's interesting to see also how the lines are becoming blurry between different channels. What about use cases in supply chain? You mentioned inventory management. Have you seen anything particularly interesting in this space?
So we have a few investments more downstream. So, for example, we have an investment in Nextel that does has a software for the replenishment and first allocation of items, fashion items in a store. And so it has not only the workflow kind of solution, but also the intelligence that will give the decision maker the information what should kind of be the best allocation of stock per their own stores, and also maybe decide on store transfers. So we've been looking into that, of course, on the upstream. Even though we don't have a specific investment there, we do think there's a lot of opportunities out there, and also AI in a way can play an important and relevant aspect. Only recently we've done an investment in a company named Keychain. They're more on this kind of B2B side of things, in the sense they have a solution that connects retailers and CPGs or producers of white label production. And so this is a very dispersed market, in the sense that the way it traditionally works is these two parties find themselves in conferences, and retailers try to understand if that particular CPG is able to deliver a certain quantity of items in a certain quality kind of aspect, and also in a certain timeline. And this is how traditional things are done. Keychain brings this information more structure, in the sense that they have a database of a lot of CPGs that may deliver these items. They have all the credentials, all the certifications out there. It's very well structured, this information. And then a retailer can go to this database and make their own selection and choices. And so this is one investment that we did recently, which we really believe, Keychain. But I mean, there are other aspects of it that we are still looking to make an investment on.
Yeah. I also had a look on your portfolio companies on your website, and I think there was one called Didimo. It said fully animatable digital humans. That sparked obviously my interest, because you invested in 2020, and right now I think if you look on X, and if you look what Figure is doing, what Nvidia showed 2 days ago during their conference. It's about robotics and connecting a large language model to something that communicates with human beings. Yeah, so we discussed frontline workers. You said, maybe that's not a case for it. Maybe customer service, it can be very well a case, where you talk to an avatar in the future, and the avatar looks like, I don't know, how you want, and how it shows the best conversion rate. If you're, let's say, age 40, probably you need a peer. You don't need an older person. So how do you see that, and what's your experience with Didimo?
In the case of Didimo, this was a very early stage investment, in the sense that it was pre-product market fit. There was an angle of retail, but the company has gone more into the gaming kind of approach. And so it's not a case that I went that path or that way. Maybe it was too soon. I don't know. Maybe that could be the case. Again, to that, in terms of vision, if I see that as a way going forward, I'm a bit unsure, and maybe again I'm looking from my own eyes. I think, in a way, makes sense, as you said. If I speak with someone that perhaps looks a bit like me, I may engage better with that person. That's true; it can happen. But still, sometimes I get frustrated, at least on more on the phone, when I'm speaking with a machine. Maybe it's the tool that doesn't work very well, but I get a bit frustrated, and I at some point I think to myself, I like to speak with a real person to solve it. So it's
I mean,
mixed.
There are also some interesting concepts and startups, and even us as a big tech player, we are going into that heavily that direction, that you automate customer service in the end, where you maybe only by exception or on exceptions you speak to the human being. And the hypothesis is obviously that the experience you get is so good, powered by an LLM, and the grounding that happens in the data. Yeah, I think we have some way to go, not just from a tech standpoint, but also from a people and acceptance standpoint, from a transparency standpoint. But I think, that will, I think I'm a strong believer that this will change, and we see a lot of those not human agents anymore in the not so far or distant future.
Yeah, I think. I mean, we're already seeing that on voice, right? A lot. So it's the next step, the next obvious step. So let's see. Maybe it's, as you said, for a certain initial kind of period, you get it, and then it is not sorted, a human will have to come to the loop.
And also maybe last resort, which I quickly wanted to touch on before we move to the end, marketing. So if I look at, in customer service, we just touched on it. It's very clear, I think, where the opportunity lies. In marketing, I think there is still this dream of hyper-personalization powered by AI, and I think obvious things like content generation, email subject line personalization, and then even fancier things like personalizing an image with a background that increases conversion rate. I think it's harder to do, but it's also the dream that looks not so far away. But I think also all the marketeers I talk to, they're very shy of unleashing AI beyond the company borders. So the autopilot AI, that's what I'm talking about. So they are shy of just letting the AI decide what goes out to the customer. They have no problem. That's at least my perception. Maybe you can confirm. They don't have a problem with using those tools internally and then come up with a great text, and it's faster. You need less people. But unleashing that putting that on autopilot, I think that's still an area not a lot of marketeers are wanting to touch. Am I wrong, or how do you see that?
I would say I tend to agree, and not only in marketing, in general. I think there's still some friction point to let it go completely autopilot. I agree also that the creative part of any industry, but retail marketing in retail is definitely one of them, is one that can be mostly disrupted by AI for sure. We've seen a lot of examples of the creative capabilities of AI. At some point, still, I think there are some things that may come in the way. One is making sure that things are continue to be authentic, right? And the other one is perhaps a bit, and maybe it's an European speaking, but it's about regulation and violating IP rights and things like that that you may be risking, especially if you are a big brand and you want to do a certain campaign. You got to make sure that all that is in there, and if it is AI created, you can actually use those images and you won't have an issue, an IP violation or anything like that. So things like that may come in the way, but I don't see them as unsolvable technical issues, but still things to pay attention to when it comes to creative content with AI.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I can say as a marketeer that when I get content from my team and they've used AI, I can recognize it. Not that it's a bad thing. I actually encourage them to use AI, but there is something very templatey and very repetitive when you're using AI. And I don't think right now content can go from AI directly to the customer or the consumer, because it will just not work. It's not resonating enough, and it's not creative enough still. So it's very good for for generating ideas. It's very good for kind of polishing if you already have content that's made by your team, so you can use AI to polish it a bit, make it sound better, maybe get more ideas. But we're a bit far from putting it on autopilot. We'll get there.
I think that's good to get such confirmations and discuss those topics, because that's also, I think, a feeling I have. Thanks for confirming that.
Let's see if we're right. We can be all wrong, but
let's see. Maybe it will be sooner than later that everything is on autopilot, and we get tremendous new hyper personalized communication from companies.
So Miguel, we're coming to the top of our time, and one last question we have for you is, what advice would you give to a retail CEO from your perspective as an investment manager? Where should they focus their investment? If you had to choose, one area, one use case that you think is kind of like a low hanging fruit for a retail CEO to invest in, what would it be?
I think I'll go back to what we've said before, which is don't be afraid to test new things, innovations, even at some point risking it on the customer side, because at some point you may get very good surprises. Even though the topic has been repeated already, I think AI, for sure, if you find tools with AI on top of it that are tackling some of your biggest pains, and not just, I'm not saying that customer support is not important and relevant, but it's certainly retailers buy and sell things, right? So it's in this value chain that the most relevant activities will come, and so don't be afraid of testing new solutions with AI along this value chain between the buying and the selling of stuff, of articles.
And the big question for me is, because I also see a lot of interesting new roles coming up in companies I work with, who will test those concepts? Is it a CIO? Is it a CTO? Or even is it a business function, like an AI transformation officer? Is it a CDO, CDTO? How do you see that? Who should do it?
I think, at least from my experience, what I see that there's a lot of these retailers have some sort of open innovation team or digitalization team. They call it different names, which kind of, and a lot of the times these don't have their budget, right? The budget comes from the operational side. And so, but these come as a bit as someone that sparks the interest and tries to bring kind of, and challenges the businesses to try different things. But you need to involve the user, right? The person and the user and the decision maker in terms of having also the budget to invest in a certain tool. So I think even if not in the beginning, but when you're really trying to test and showcase your solution, you need to have someone from the business side to validate it.
Great. I think, Miguel, that was very insightful. Thank you for lots of examples. So I think I learned a lot. Our listeners learned a lot. And yeah, any last words, Yael?
No, I think this has been great, Miguel, as always. And it's really insightful to kind of get a glimpse into how an investor in a retail tech company thinks. So I think this can give a lot of value, not only to the investors listening, but also to the retail leaders that are listening to our podcast.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate the invitation, and hopefully we'll see each other in one of those conferences pretty soon.
Great. Thank you. Have a nice day.